Last season was a wash for the Cincinnati Bengals when Joe Burrow went down with injury, but that doesn't mean there weren't any other concerns, because there certainly were. But did they address those this past offseason? Let's go ahead and discuss. What's crackalacking? It's your boy Broshmo, just in case you did not know. So welcome back to the final episode of the Deep Dive series, where we take a look at each and every NFL team and I project how they're going to do in 2024. And for the finale, I got Who Dey? That's right, your Cincinnati Bengals. But before we get into 2024, let's briefly go over 2023. Joe Burrow entered the season with a calf injury that he sustained during training camp, so the Bengals already started the year in rough waters, but it would only get worse as the offensive line was a liability and Joe Burrow would re-aggravate that injury in week 2 versus the Ravens. Burrow would play through the injury and Cincinnati would get its first win of the year against the Rams, but the offensive struggles continued. The Bengals would get demolished by the Tennessee Titans 27-3 in week 4. However, they rebounded and rebounded well with a 4-game winning streak where they beat teams like the 49ers and the Bills. Jamar Chase was churning out big games. Burrow was looking the healthiest he had all season. However, all good things do have to come to an end, and they would lose to the Texans. And then the following week, Burrow would hurt his wrist versus the Ravens, which officially brought his season to an end. Jake Browning stepped up and actually played relatively well. He went 4-3 in his starts, but the Bengals missed out on the playoffs, going 9-8. I didn't bring this up during the season recap, but this defense was horrible. They couldn't stop the run, which was 29th, and the secondary was a blown coverage machine, where they ended up finishing 25th. It was honestly astonishing that this team remained competitive during Burrow's injury and after he went down. To go 9-8 with the hardest schedule in football, essentially without your starting quarterback, is truly a testament of this coaching staff. Real quick, I gotta give a shout out to today's sponsor, Underdog Fantasy. I absolutely love Underdog Fantasy because I love football, and now that the football season is far and away, it doesn't mean my betting season has to be, because they do all kinds of sports, whether it's baseball, basketball, esports even. They got you covered, whether that's weekly best ball or my favorite, higher lower on player props. So if you sign up at Underdog Fantasy using promo code BROSHMO, then they will give you a first time deposit up to $250. That's right. So if you're gonna go and bet with Underdog Fantasy, use promo code BROSHMO, take advantage of this offer, but please bet responsibly and bet within your means. The Bengals lost some of their older players like Tyler Boyd, Chidobe Awuzie. They traded Joe Mixon, and I think those are all relatively fine losses. They also chose not to bring back offensive tackle Jonah Williams, which I think is the right call. But they did take a couple of big hits in the form of defensive tackle DJ Reader going to the Lions and Brian Callahan taking the head coaching job for the Tennessee Titans. And I get it. Reader, he's been banged up the last few seasons. Callahan wasn't even the play caller during his time in Cincinnati. But these guys were significant parts of the Bengals, and I think they will sorely be missed. But regardless, let's talk about their additions. So the Bengals made some relatively cheap additions this offseason, with one not being Sheldon Rankins. Sheldon Rankins gets 2 years, $26 million. You can make a great case. Oh, they could have brought back DJ Reader for just a little bit more. And I mean like a little bit. I think Reader was 2 years, like $27.5 million or something like that. But Rankins, they're hoping to fill that hole of DJ Reader with a multitude of players. You got Rankins here kind of being the pass rush upside, and then we'll talk about it when we get to the draft. You get a guy who you think could be a relatively solid run defender that can hopefully fill that hole somewhat that you're losing with Reader. And I get it, Reader lasts like 4 years. He's been beat up. He hasn't really played a full season, so I guess you let him go because of that. But Rankins, he's fine if you're gonna be like, he's a fine part of the rotation. He's probably gonna end up being the lead snap getter outside of like BJ Hill. But I don't know, it'd be fascinating. I think he does add some necessary pass rush to this team on the interior. They also add Oh, Miami Dolphins, great. Mike Gesicki, fins up, baby, fins up. He's going to be in there rotating with Drew Sample, who also got extended this offseason. I think it was like a 3-year deal. Gesicki's only here for 1 year. He's a better receiving option than Sample, which is fine. Like, Sample gives you more of an all-around type of player who's a solid blocker, a good security blanket as a pass catcher. You're hoping Gesicki gives you a little bit more as a receiving option. I think their snaps are going to be relatively similar throughout the season, so it's a good addition. It's a bit more than a depth addition as well. They also signed Zach Moss, who played relatively well when he had to step in for Jonathan Taylor. They got him at a really good price, 2 years, $8 million. He's going to compete there with Chase Brown. Moss, not exactly like the most explosive player, someone who has good contact balance, though yards after contact was only 2.81 last year. Still a relatively fine number. But you do get a little bit more of a home run threat with Chase Brown. So, I mean, you lose Joe Mixon. You lose the nice, reliable floor of Joe Mixon. Though, I'd argue Zach Moss was pretty darn dependable last season and maybe gives you a little bit more upside than Mixon, who, I mean, Mixon is a savvy vet. I mean, Moss has age on his side, but I don't know, man. We'll see. We'll see. I think it was solid. I think it was solid, especially maybe if like Chase Brown takes a step in the right direction, then you're feeling a bit better about your backfield. They also add Geno Stone, arguably probably their best offseason sign-in here. They got him at 2 years, $15 million. Very, very solid price. And I'm kind of confused. They bring up like the position limbo of Dax Hill. Yeah, I'm totally confused what they're going to do with Dax Hill. Is he going to stay at safety? Or are they going to move him out to corner, play him in the slot? Like, he's a defensive back, but where does he fit in to the secondary? Like, Stone, you're starting. This guy, I think he led safeties in interceptions last year. Could be wrong about that. Can't remember. But dude was an interception monster. Kind of broke out in Baltimore last season. Love to see it. I liked him coming out of Iowa. I think it was Iowa. It was like so long ago, but thought it was a good pickup. I'm a little more hesitant with, okay, good. It's the next one. Von Bell. I get it. You bring him back. He's familiar with the system and whatnot. Things didn't look great in the secondary last year when you lost guys like Bates and Von Bell, but I feel like Bates was kind of the bigger factor there. And to be fair, last season, a lot of the struggles were kind of on the cornerback room in general, because to be fair, Coach Lou's defense, it puts a lot on the cornerbacks to, hey, go out and cover, do your job. Good luck, Godspeed. So I don't know how much Von Bell really will add to that. I mean, I guess he adds a presence in the box, helps the run at the second level. But I thought Jordan Battle was doing a relatively good job. I thought, Von Bell might not even end up being the starter. I mean, come on. It's got to be Battle, right? Battle was so good for him at the end of last season. So, I don't know. I got my gripes about it. Outside of that, he just talks about a ton of re-signings. So I guess without further ado, let's go ahead and talk about what they added in the draft. With their first round pick, they end up taking Amarius Mims, tackle out of Georgia. I did forget to mention the Trent Brown signing, which, hey, I think he's a solid starter. When healthy and out there, he's pretty darn good. Thing is, he's going to maybe miss like 3 to 4 games a year. And he comes in now, I think, being the backup, because Mims, I know, doesn't have a lot of starting experience. I think he only had 8 career starts to his name. But in terms of just length, physical tools, athleticism, play strength, like, he has it. And he's well built. Like, this is the tackle that the Bengals want. This is their type of guy. And I think you might as well just go and start him right off the bat. Because I get it, he lacks experience, but I think he's a guy that can definitely get by on his tools fairly early on. We've seen a little bit of that in camp with some of the highlights that have been put out on X. But I was really happy with this. He was someone I thought could be a top 10 pick prior to the college football season. The ankle injury that ended up resulting in like tightrope surgery, which is a minor procedure, did I think maybe hurt his stock a little bit just because you didn't get a full season to watch him play. But when he was out there, he was hella good, and I loved the pickup. Then in the second round, they go with Chris Jenkins out of Michigan, defensive interior. A little undersized, though. He's around that 300, so not so undersized, but he was a little undersized there at Michigan. Guy with a great motor and very, very good against the run. Very disciplined, knows how to hold his gap. He'll go and make plays out on the sideline. Very good run defender. This is the run aspect I'm talking about when replacing DJ Reader. And might not have the same size or girth you expect for a guy that you would want to play in that like 1 or 0 tech. But someone who's capable of. I think he is. I think he truly is. He gives them a little versatility along the defensive line. And a guy that just hasn't really carved out a effective pass rush toolbox thus far, and I mean that's fine. You could probably develop that in Cincinnati. You're kind of hoping to, because you really like the ability. I mean, shoot, his dad used to be a nose tackle back in the day for the Panthers. He was a little heftier though. And then they go and snag Jermaine Burton out of Alabama. This guy probably should have, like, if not for some of the character concerns, probably would have been in that first round, early second round conversation. Because he's great, man. He's a guy that can create separation vertically. A very good contested catcher. Very, very solid hands. Plays the ball so well. Someone who prior to the season I thought was going to have a breakout. Didn't really come to fruition in 2022. 2023, it was a bit more of what I expected, but like I said, there were some off-field concerns with him and his attitude that led to him probably falling. And I think largely maybe some of those were minimal. Like I thought him knocking the hat off the girl's head after the Tennessee loss was a bit overblown. Because I don't know, I couldn't tell it was a girl in the video when she was running by, and he just sees a Tennessee fan with a hat, all these people waving their hands in his face. He's like, get out of my way. Uh-oh. I thought that was an honest mistake. More so with how he left Georgia and some of the potential locker room and coaching conflicts that were around. Like you were hearing it around the cycle that how much of it is true, don't really know, but sometimes where there's smoke, there's fire. Those were a bit more concerning to me, but Burton, great. We've seen it in the preseason. You've seen his downfield threat, the downfield ability of him, and how he'll work into this wide receiver core, I think is going to be very fascinating. And then at the end of the third round, they go with McKinley Jackson. He's a bit more of that nose tackle type, right? At least at his size, he's got some good explosiveness to him. Someone who'd actually played quite a bit all over the Texas A&M defensive line. So got quite a bit of versatility to him. Just never had that big productive year. Just you've seen the flashes with him, so you get him here hoping you can develop that, because there's definitely some tools with him. So I like that they're like, hey, we just lost DJ Reader. That's a big part of our defensive line. Our defensive line was a huge liability last year when it came to not just generating pass rush, but also stopping the run. Let's take some swings on some of these guys here on the interior. And I like it. I like it a lot. And then they go Eric All in the fourth round. This one's fine to me. It is what it is. I wasn't like that high on Eric All, admittedly. A guy that had some injury red flags. Initially, he was stuck behind. Initially, when he was at Michigan, just stuck behind depth. People have liked some of the stuff they've seen on the field for him. For me, it wasn't quite enough. I had him more in that mid to late day 3 area, but it's all right. It's fine. It's fine. You get him in the room, you can develop him. Hopefully, he can stay healthy. Then they grab Josh Newton in the 5th round. I actually really like Josh Newton. Very no nonsense. Okay, we're gonna fight it out. I'm gonna lay hands on you. I'm gonna put my hand in my in your hip pocket, and I'm gonna stick with you throughout the whole route. You go back to not last season, but the year prior. He actually had a very solid game against Xavier Worthy and his downfield speed, where Newton was able to run with him just because he was able to put hands on him, and he's actually relatively discreet with his hand usage. Like he is literally the type of corner that Coach Lou wants. With I mean, this was a team that played a lot of man coverages, some cover 2, so he's right up Coach Lou's alley. So good pick. I like the pick. I thought he could have maybe gone around earlier. And then they snag Tanner McLaughlin. They double dip at the tight end position. McLaughlin, more of a receiving tight end. He was a former wide receiver. I think it was Southern Utah he came from, but I'm not positive. I can't remember. Again, the 2024 draft class was ages ago for me. I'm already on to 2025, but McLaughlin definitely is, I think, a more well-rounded receiving option than maybe Eric All. Eric All just might have a bit better of an all-around game. So you take a swing on 2 of these guys on day 3, hoping one maybe hits. And then they go with Cedric Johnson, who's going to be a developmental type. He's a project edge player out of Ole Miss. I think he was my edge 10 going into the college football season because I was anticipating a breakout year for him. Breakout year didn't come. It was very similar to his 2022, but still you look at him as a guy with very good tools that are worth developing, and maybe that you could turn that into something a few years down the line. So I thought it was worth the shot. And then they took Dejon Anthony out of Ole Miss, coming in as a safety. I think he's kind of a defensive back. I think he played a little bit in the slot. Let me actually bring up his draft profile real quick, because I think I did list him. Yep, I listed him as a slot player. Coming in at 6 foot, 195. Said he was very versatile in the middle of the field since he has played deep in the box and in the slot, offers impressive length for the slot position. So I'm already pigeonholing this guy in the slot. Said he's a hard hitter, but won't sacrifice technique to make a hit. He was a very sure tackler. So yeah, this guy's playing the slot. More quick than he is fast, which typically means you're going to the slot. That's typically why that's usually why a lot of players that have played outside corner in college get kicked into the slot. Maybe some long speed concerns. It could also be size concerns, but in this case, it's not for Anthony. Talked about his change direction. Not ideal. More of a north-south runner. Does play a tad high, which limits him out of his transition, whether it's flipping his hips or planting his foot and coming downhill. Relatively sounds like a solid player that could be a special teams impact somewhere down the line. And then did they draft one more guy? Was my boy Matt Lee UDFA? That kind of breaks my heart. I was a big Matt Lee guy. Well, I'm a Hurricanes fan. Of course I'm a Matt Lee guy. No, he was. They just don't list it here. What is this? Disrespecting my Hurricanes like that? All right, whatever. Let's talk about it. Matt Lee, drafted in the 7th round, pick 237. A bit not undersized. He hovers around that 300. I feel like he probably played closer to 290 at Miami. Doesn't have like the prettiest body for a center, but plays hella good, really good movement skills. Very solid in pass protection. Thought he could probably go higher than the 7th round, but I think I had him about around that 6th round, 5th, 6th round area. Last year's interior class was really good, so it kind of like pushed some guys down the board. But I like Matt Lee, man. I like him, and hopefully he's someone that can maybe make the squad. And even if he's just the practice squad, like maybe he could be something for them somewhere down the line. Because keep in mind, at center, Ted Karras. How old is Karras? I feel like he's 33, 32. Another former Dolphin great. Oh, he's only 31? Why does it feel like he's been in the league for like 20 years? I mean, dude, it feels like he hasn't been in Miami for like 10 years. He was there in 2020. Isn't that wild? So yeah, 31. So, I mean, you could groom out Matt Lee to eventually be a replacement in like 2 to 3 years. And of course, we're talking about the potential upside of a prospect. It's probably more logical. Either they're going to end up bouncing around camps, or they end up, if things go well, they end up being a good backup for the squad and being good depth. But let's go ahead. Let's talk about the coaching staff. Zach Taylor's been the head coach here since 2019. He was formerly the QB's coach and wide receivers coach for the Los Angeles Rams under Sean McVay. And actually, when he first showed up here in Cincinnati, he very much ran the McVay system, the wide zone blocking scheme, though we did see a bit of that change in 2022, where he started going more towards a man gap blocking scheme. Not to say they've totally like moved away from the wide zone, but there's definitely more of an emphasis on having big, meaty offensive linemen that are going to take on blockers head on, down, and just down block and win those blocks. We've seen great success. I mean, you love seeing a coach's ability to adapt, which I think Zach Taylor has done. And I mean, this is his offense through and through. It's pro spread, RPO heavy. He works with motion. Does it give the defense variety of, not necessarily a variety of different looks, but give the defense similar looks with similar motion, but run a variety of different things from those looks. And I think he does a great job of that. I think he's improved, especially the last few years as the play caller. But this isn't a one-man operation. Like, he's talked extensively about how as a coaching staff, they come up with the game plan offensively, and it's just Taylor that's making the play calls on Sunday, sure, but through the week, it is a team effort. And Brian Callahan was very involved in that. Matter of fact, you also got to give a little woo-woo to Frank Pollock as the run game coordinator. Those two guys were very involved in what the game plan would be on Sunday. Now that responsibility is going to be on, or at least half of that responsibility is going to be on Dan Pitcher, who was formerly the assistant? No, he's been an assistant with Cincinnati since 2016, but he was formerly the QB coach for the Bengals. So he gets a little bit of promotion. He's been around for a long time. I mean, actually dating prior to when Zach Taylor showed up. But he knows how things go here, and I feel like he's probably he has been groomed for this opportunity. So I don't feel like they're going to be missing much offensively. He has been under the wing of Brian Callahan, Zach Taylor for quite some time. I feel like he's going to be ready for this opportunity. And then we got Coach Lou. He's been the DC since Taylor arrived. He was formerly the DB's coach for the Giants and the Miami Dolphins. Fins up, baby, fins up. And it'd be fair to say last year wasn't a great year for Coach Lou. I remember early on, first couple of years when it came to this Bengals defense under Coach Lou, that I was like, I don't get what this guy wants to run. He's running just a variety of different things. I don't know what he wants to do. It's this whole idea of being a jack of all trades, but a master of nothing. Like, you're good at much, but you're great at nothing. And that's kind of how I felt the Bengals defense was for a long time. And then kapow, they were fairly good the last couple of years. And I was like, you know what? I think I was just wrong about Coach Lou. He was trying a variety of things, seeing what his players' strengths were, and got the right guys in there, and it became a very productive defense. And then last season, we saw a bit of stubbornness on his end, where the run defense wasn't working. Like, they played a lot of like cover 2 and man, which, yeah, that lends itself to being eaten up by the run game. Typically, hey, if we're struggling to stop the run, maybe you switch to cover 3. That way you kind of fill the box a bit more. They didn't do that. They were just like, okay, whatever, we're just going to suck at the run. But unfortunately, his guys were getting toasted in coverage. Like DJ Turner, he had some flashes, but he also got toasted quite a bit last year. Cam Taylor-Britt, for as good as he was last year, there were a few cases where, okay, he got beat. But I mean, we've seen Coach Lou evolve his scheme, so that's why I'm not like positive if they are going to be running a similar defense. Like, I mean, I put here essentially what they just did last year. It's a multiple front, plays a variety of cover 2 and man coverage. This is a team that late, like on late downs, like 3rd, 4th downs, they'll go to cover 1, they'll go to cover 0. They had the highest blitz rate on 3rd downs, where it was 10th in the league. Their blitz rate on 3rd and long was 40. They blitzed 40% of the time, kind of a nutty number. But overall, their blitz rate hardly ever blitzed on their early downs. Blitz rate was 22% through all of last season. So I don't know, man. He's a guy that's been shown to be adaptable, even though last year it was just kind of like, it's gonna work eventually. Didn't really, unfortunately, but he's shown to be adaptable. Maybe we see something a bit different this coming season, or maybe he feels like he's got the right players to really run what he wants to. And I'm hoping it gets better, but because I am truly a big fan of his. He's been around the league for feels like quite a while. I mean, this guy was a DB coach for the Dolphins for about like 5 years. He was our interim DC for a portion, so maybe I just got a fondness for Coach Lou. But let's talk about the rest of this coaching staff. As I'm not gonna lie to you, I'm not too familiar with a good portion of this coaching staff. Like, there's some names like here, like James Casey. I only know because he's a former player, but I'm not too familiar with his work as a positions coach. Frank Pollock's just kind of a legend, so he's just a hell of a good offensive line coach. That's kind of the fact of the matter, man. He hella good in that regard. Justice Hill. Not familiar with, couldn't tell you too much about. We could open up his profile real quick. Take a gander. He did join. He's in his 3rd year as a running backs coach. Where was he prior to that? Oh, he was at the University of Tulsa. Okay, so he was at the collegiate ranks. So he was a position coach at the collegiate ranks. Probably why I don't know too much about him. Troy Waters has done a great job with the receivers. He's been the wide receivers coach, I think, for the last 6 years. Just done a great job. We could go to the defense, and you got Mark Duffner, who's senior defensive assistant. That title just means, hey, you're old. Bring that wisdom in here. Guy that's been around the league for a long time. He actually had a brief stint with the Bengals, I think back in the 90s, maybe the early 2000s. Can't remember. I was a very, very young child at that point. So sorry, not sorry. But yeah, I mean, for the most part, I'm just a bit unfamiliar with the the actual coaching staff. But I look forward to getting a little bit more familiar with some of these guys. Let's go ahead. Let's talk about this roster, though. As per usual, you're going to see my grades for each position group over here. Let's go ahead. Start at the quarterback, because football's just better when Joe Burrow's healthy. He, in my opinion, is a part of that elite bunch of quarterbacks simply due to just how quickly he's able to get the ball out of his hands, how precise his throws are, just the decision making overall. Like typically you're going to see him with an adjusted completion percentage somewhere between 77 to 79%. That's hella good. Of course, you got to take into consideration the type of offense, percentage of screens, stuff like that. But also you look at his ability to alleviate pressure just because how quickly he gets the ball out. Like no one gets the ball out quicker than Joe Burrow. You go back to 2022, he was getting the ball out 2.49 seconds. That's just a ludicrous number. His ability to alleviate pressure just simply by being a good decision maker is just phenomenal. And it's just, I just hope he can stay healthy because, I mean, hey, well, honestly, in my opinion, football's better when the Bengals are vying for a Super Bowl rather than what we saw last year, basically them vying to survive. But Joe Burrow's as good as it gets. He's kind of the dream of any noodle armed quarterback out there. Not to say like he has a terrible arm. He doesn't. I would say it's like a 6.5. We're going to go on a scale 1 to 10. But it's definitely not the strongest, not the most, it's just not the strongest arm. But he does a good job at just assessing the field, making quick decisions. When he does go deep, he throws with really good touch. Dude's a great quarterback. Let's talk about the playmakers around him. Jamar Chase expected to play in the opener despite the contract dispute currently going on. And he's one of the best wide receivers in football. That's not a hot take. T. Higgins coming off a down year. Probably wants to make sure that next contract is pretty meaty. I'm sure the Bengals, they want him to play hella well because that means, well, if we can move him, then we're going to get some significant draft capital. So, yeah, he's coming off the down year, but now back healthy. It'll be good. It'll be good. The question is who's going to be that third wide receiver? And I like, if you're asking who I want it to be, it's Jermaine Burton, who I feel like it's going to be. Like Trenton Irwin led the team in snaps from the wide receiver position outside of guys like Higgins and Chase. So he's kind of the veteran answer here. I've seen some places have Andre Yoshevas, the former Princeton wide receiver, but he's more big-bodied. Feels like more of a possession guy. Feels like more of a T. Higgins role. And I mean, if we're going to look at let's just go ahead. Let's look at who was leading in snaps out of the slot last season. Of course, it's going to be Tyler Boyd, but I mean, let's go past that. And it's percentage-wise, you had like Charlie Jones, but didn't play a lot of snaps. At 70%, you had guys like Tanner Hudson. I mean, it was Trenton Irwin. I know Irwin, a majority of his snaps came outside. Because, I mean, occasionally you're going to kick Jamar Chase into the slot because, I mean, he's your best weapon. Move him around. Keep the the defense, I should say, on its toes. So if I'm going to go with a safe bet, I'm going to lean with Irwin. I don't love that answer, but I feel like he's the best guy. He's built to be that slot player opposed to like Yoshevas and Burton. Burton really excelled in preseason, showing, hey, throw it deep. I got you. Very sure hands. And I love Burton. I hope Burton kind of works. He's going to be, I think, going to be active in the wide receiver room in some shape or form. But again, this is just me leaning on the vet. I'm leaning on the veteran. Let's actually take a gander at the depth of the other guys. This is happening on the day cuts are happening. So some of these guys are no longer on the roster. I'll highlight some of the ones that maybe didn't make the roster, could make the practice squad, but probably I'm going to lean more to talking about who is on this roster. You got Charlie Jones. I think he's more of a special teamer, more of a return man, more of that wide receiver 6. I mentioned Burning being that vertical threat. He's got the speed to do that. Solid size. Yoshivas more of this possession type that can attack vertically, certainly. So, like, I think it's gonna be interesting to see who ends up like playing into. Is it Yoshivas? Is it Burton? Is it Irwin? Like, I think it's gonna be one of those 3. So it's gonna be a good time. As far as guys like Cole Burgess, Shedrick Jackson, Kendrick Pryor, none of them made the roster. I do want to highlight Cole Burgess. He was kind of a off-season draft darling just because he had some nutty workout times and honestly kind of lit it up in like, I feel like it was like D3 football, but very interesting from a athletic perspective, probably makes the practice squad. We jump to the tight end room. As you saw, I have Gesicki as the lead snap getter. Again, this isn't your traditional starter, but the guy that I think is going to see the field the most snap-wise, and I went with Gesicki. It's really a toss-up between Gesicki and Drew Sample. Sample is going to be someone you could really have on the field at any time, while Gesicki more so a receiving tight end. And honestly, I think he's going to eat into some of those slot snaps as well. So, like, I think for the most part, it's going to be pretty close in terms of who ends up being the lead snap getter from the tight end room. Tanner Hudson still hanging around. You love it. I think he was extended this past off season. And then they drafted guys like Eric All, who I talked briefly about in the draft section. Same with Tanner McLaughlin. Both those guys, as far as I've seen, have made the roster cut. It's Cam Grady who didn't. So keep it 5 tight ends. That's a lot of 5. That's a lot of tight ends. That's a lot of tight ends. But we'll see how it works. To be fair, Mike Gesicki, he's on a 1-year deal, so he's likely out of there. Kind of probably hoping maybe you could develop an Eric All or a Tanner McLaughlin into that receiving threat. Though they do have Tanner Hudson, who played well for him last year. He did. The backfield, very fascinating. Because Zach Moss, Chase Brown, those are going to be your lead snap getters. It's going to be easy peasy. They only kept Travion Williams. Elijah Collins actually didn't make the final roster, as far as I'm seeing right now. Travion Williams, more of a special teamer. I mentioned, I kind of talked about the running back room when I was talking about the signing of Zach Moss, where you have more of a spark, more explosiveness with Chase Brown, but I think Zach Moss is going to be the more consistent down-to-down back. That's why I labeled him as the starter. So I mean, they got a good room. They got a really good wide receiver room. They have solid tight ends with some potential promising guys to develop, and the running back room, as for right now, is fine enough. They probably should add another guy, a 4th back in there, but not necessarily necessary. Let's talk about the offensive line. As you can tell, I have them very middle of the road, and I think that's fair. As we've seen the fall off. Well, for one, Cordero Volson, not a big fan of. Feels like he's a very replaceable part of the offensive line. They just currently don't have that part on the roster. You got Ted Karras. I love Ted Karras. I've been a Ted Karras guy. I was excited when he signed with the Dolphins. Pissed off when they cut him. I think it was cut, or I think he was cut. Can't remember. It's been so long now. That was back in 2020. But even with him, like, he's still playing fine enough, but you are looking for that heir apparent, kind of hoping Matt Lee can be that. Fun fact, looks like Matt Lee did indeed make the roster over guys like Trey Hill and Nate Gilliam. You have Alex Kappa, who's coming off an okay season. He helps creep the offensive line back towards average. It's fine. But as a pass protector, you definitely saw a bit of regression there. So hopefully he could kind of bounce back. We all know, again, Volson, it's kind of the weak spot there. Orlando Brown. Orlando Brown's going to Orlando Brown. He's a better pass protector than you would expect at his size. And in this run scheme, he's actually pretty darn good. And I think Amarius Mims is going to give him a run for his money about for who may be the best player on this offensive line. Because honestly, as it stands now, like, they don't have a superstar offensive lineman. They just don't. You're not going to sell me on Orlando Brown. I don't think I'd put him in like the top 10 tackles among the league, even though got the payday like it. I just don't. I don't believe that. But I think Mims, man, maybe he could emerge. He is coming off the pec injury, so I don't know if he initially starts the year, but that's fine. They have a reliable vet in Trent Brown who could fill in until Mims is good. I don't think they put Mims on the pub, so it probably means he'll either be back week 1 or maybe week 2 or 3. That he's going to be back relatively quickly. But I loved the pick of Mims. I really think it's going to elevate this offensive line. It truly, truly is. Going to the backups, I already mentioned Gilliam didn't make the squad. Same with Cochran, didn't make the squad. Cody Ford at this point, kind of a journeyman. He's fine if he starts games. You don't love it, but maybe he could get you point A to point B by the time maybe like Kappa or Volson gets back. Then again, I mean, is there going to be that big of a difference between Volson and Ford? Yeah, I think there will be. I do think Volson's a better player than Ford at this juncture. Though Jackson Kirkland, I think, is very interesting here. He's currently listed as a tackle. Probably he's the backup guard. Trent Brown's the first tackle in. I really do think Kirkland, there's a chance he could end up being if an injury happens at guard, he's the guy rather than like Cody Ford. I think there's possibilities there. I was a big Jackson Kirkland guy coming out of Washington, had a down year, fell down my board, went to the Shrine Bowl, found out he had, I think it was like an ankle, foot injury or something, decided to return back to school, and ended up, I think, becoming a UDFA in the, I guess that would be the 2023 draft. But like, you love the movement skills. I don't necessarily think the play strength is there. It's kind of not what they want at the tackle, like at the tackle position. They like that play strength, but I mean, that probably plays more well to the tackle rather than the guard position. So I don't know. We'll see. Jake Browning, he came in, played good football, went 4-3 for the Bengals. Hopefully Burrow doesn't miss time like that, and if he does, it's like a game or two at the most. But he is a very capable backup. Logan Woodside was, I think, one of their most recent cuts as of the time of this recording. But like, all in all, like, for me, when it comes to the Bengals, I still think this is an above average offense. The concerns with the offensive line are real. And I know some people were like, concerns with the offensive line, that's mostly a better offensive line than most of the NFL. And I don't disagree. It's just, it's a very average offensive line. Let's see what Mims can do. He's a rookie. Hopefully Alex Kappa steps up as a pass protector after the down year as a pass protector. Again, still good as a run blocker. Karras is fine. Don't see the regression happening with him. I'm kind of out on Volson, and Orlando Brown is a fine starting tackle. He's a fine enough starting tackle. So they got the weapons. They got the quarterback. Let's see it happen. Let's go ahead, talk about the defense. So hold your breath. This defense, you're hoping some of the young parts progress. You're hoping maybe you adequately filled some of the holes, things that gave you problems last year. I don't know if that's really going to be the case. I have the pass rush being the best thing on this defense. That's not really saying too much. It's really Trey Hendrickson. Trey Hendrickson desperately needs some help. Maybe Joseph Asai gets more snaps this year because he's their next leader in terms of pass rush win rate from last year. But again, with him, that's an extremely small sample size. I mean, after that, it's Miles Murphy, who, again, extremely small sample size. I think he starts the year on the PUP as well, which that sucks. You don't want to see that. Some people might be hooting and hollering for Sam Hubbard, 8.2% pass rush win rate. They've been needing to find an actual running mate for Trey Hendrickson for a minute. You were hoping Miles Murphy could be that guy. At least you won't know early in this season because he's banged up and he's hurt. BJ Hill, he's fine. He very solid player. He was a very, very good tandem with DJ Reader, but now the problem is no DJ Reader. Last year, another guy with an 8.2% pass rush win rate, but hey, that's kind of fine on the interior, especially when you got a guy like DJ Reader who had a 13% pass rush win rate. You're kind of loving it. You're kind of liking it, but now you got to replace it, which kind of sucks. And what they're going to do is they're going to bring in Sheldon Rankins, who's going to fill in that pass rush role. I don't think he's not going to bring much as a run defender. That's not his game. BJ Hill is actually a very solid run defender. That's kind of the allure of BJ Hill, is just how good his all-around game is. But when it came to Sheldon Rankins, dude had a 14.9% pass rush win rate. It's just you're going to have to live with him not being a solid run defender, but you draft Chris Jenkins, that's going to be your guy. That's going to be the early down player, probably, most likely. So like I feel good about the pass rush, at least from the interior. It's really dude. It's honestly the run game. Like the run game's the lowest grade on this defense for me. If preseason is any indication, then it should the run defense might be more of the same of what we saw last season, which really sucks. Really sucks. You're losing a very good, not just good pass rusher, but good run defender in DJ Reader. So it's like, golly, man, you can't catch a break. You really can't catch a break. And I know I've said it with preseason. It's like preseason, training camp. Really, I just look, you take it with a grain of salt because there's a lot of nonsense, a lot of optimism going out there that just doesn't spill over into the regular season. It just doesn't. And if anything, I always say the negatives probably mean a lot more during preseason than the positives. And the negative thing is the run game still looks bad. The run defense just doesn't look like it's there, and I'm scared. I'm scared, especially with the type of scheme that Lou, at least what he mainly ran last year. The defensive line, the linebackers, they're not going to get protection when it comes to the run game. They're just not. You're not going to see a lot of loaded boxes. You're going to have your corners facing away from the line of scrimmage. It's going to be on these guys along the defensive line to play well and get better. But let's look at the depth on the defensive line, and maybe they can. Maybe they can get better. As, again, Miles Murphy starting the year on the PUP. They got Joseph Asai. I like Asai, but he is very much a pass rush threat. That's a DPR type. That's his game. Zach Carter, I loved him coming out of Florida. Hasn't worked out yet. I'm willing to probably go out on a limb here and say probably never will. Chris Jenkins is certainly that next guy in. They will retain Cedric Johnson, but he's very much a developmental player. They got McKinley Jackson, who very much a developmental guy, though he's got that girth and size. You're kind of hoping maybe that'll help with the run game, so it's not just like Chris Jenkins to come in and fill that role that Rankins can't. McKinley can certainly come in and just with both Jackson and Jenkins, they're versatile. They're guys that have lined up all along the defensive line for their respective schools, Michigan and Texas A&M. So they're very versatile body types. Jay Tufele, depth. They did cut Travis Bell, Carlos Davis, and Dominique Davis. No real reason to talk about any of these guys. Travis Bell, I liked coming out of Kennesaw State as like a priority UDFA like a couple of years ago, but kind of figured he would have been a camp body, practice squad type of player. Talking about the linebacker core, this is honestly one of the best. I would say one of the best linebacking cores in the NFL. Like, I'm a big fan of both Jermaine Pratt and Logan Wilson. They do a phenomenal job. Both are quality run defenders. Both are quality in coverage. That's the thing, man. Like, they might not be like, oh, but they're not superstars. You don't need a superstar at linebacker. These guys are just, they go in, they do their job, they do it really, really well, and you feel good about them not being a liability. Because this team did play a lot of man, they were either asked to like man up out on the tight end or running back out of the backfield, or they're playing this hook zone, which again kind of pulled them away from the line of scrimmage. So you look at like the defensive stops for the squad or for the linebacking core, wasn't nearly as high as you expect for a linebacker. Again, you got Pratt with 35, you got Wilson with 32. Those aren't high numbers, and it's not like they were missing tackles, because they certainly weren't. It's just they're not asked to come in and fill in gaps like that. That's just not what this defense asks them to do. But they're very solid in that regard. Akeem Davis Gaither, I believe, got an extension, even if it was like a 1 year. He got extended to remain with this squad. He actually did pretty well as kind of this designated pass rush threat. But I mean, to be fair, those times were like few and far between. Didn't see a lot of time because, well, Pratt and Wilson never leave the field. Joe Bacci, former Michigan State player, kind of more of a, not a high-end athlete, more of a thumper, sure tackler, another guy that just that's not going to see the field a ton unless because of injury. But then again, if injury does happen in the linebacker core, you don't exactly got good players there that I would feel comfortable in filling in for the likes of Wilson or Pratt. Devin Harper, is he still undersized? He was coming out of Oklahoma State. Couldn't tell you really too much about him. You got I actually liked the John Meta coming out of Wisconsin. He's more of this like edge defender type at Wisconsin. He was kind of used in that role where like he would blitz, he would set the edge, he could come in, fill gaps. Like they used him of a lot of places around that defensive front. So I'm intrigued. Did he actually make the roster before I talk about him a little bit? Hey, look, Devin Harper didn't make it though. So I love John Meta making the roster. I love that because he's got a little bit of versatility to him. If anything, probably a bit of an upgrade potentially in a guy over like Akeem Davis Gaither, who's been here a while. So it just hasn't developed into anything much more. But again, a lot of that has to do with opportunity. Talking about the secondary, I believe it'll get better, but I'm very conservative when it comes to the grades that I lay out. I gave it a C+. Because I mean, I love Cam Taylor-Britt, one of my favorite corners in the league. Really liked him coming out of the draft. He was a legit playmaker in coverage last year for the Bengals. Go and look, ended up having 4 interceptions, 5 pass breakups. Did a good job. 53.4% catch rate allowed is a really good number. He's your number 1 corner. Currently, they're listed Daxton Hill as the starter. Honestly, for this cornerback 2 position, I should have just put Michigan corner. That's what I should have did. I went with DJ Moore just because, well, we saw him do it last year opposed to Dax Hill, who, what was his, I mean, he was mainly playing safety. Yeah, he only had 30 reps out wide at corner on the perimeter. Played basically deep. He was basically that he was the one in cover one, essentially. So now him moving to the corner position is going to be fascinating. I honestly thought, part of me, I think his best position might be in the slot, but I mean, you got Mike Hilton. Mike Hilton might not be, you know, what he once was, but he's still hella good. Like, I'd say he's still a top 10 slot corner in the NFL. Didn't allow a touchdown last season. Had 2 interceptions, 4 pass breakups, allowed a completion rate of 42.7%. Yeah, it's going to be higher than what it is for an outside corner. Is that a little higher than what you'd want to see? Sure, but he did a very good job last season, and honestly his whole career. Someone, please give Mike Hilton his flowers. He deserves it. But I kind of figured Daxton Hill, because coming out of Michigan, I thought that he might end up being that slot guy. He might end up being the heir apparent, just because I was like, oh yeah, having him in the slot makes so much sense just because the range and the movement skills. Okay, playing him at deep safety, that makes so much sense because of the range, the movement skills. But I mean, honestly, between Hill and Turner out wide, it's kind of a toss-up. Turner had his moments. He had his flashes, but he also had his not moments and not flashes. The opposite of that. And I mean, Hill essentially is going to be a bit of an enigma in terms of what to project. I mean, it's not like he played very much his rookie year. Last year, he was playing more deep safety. So, cornerback 2 is a bit of a question mark. If with the safety position, obviously you signed Geno Stone. He's your starter. He was a interception monster last year. It makes sense. He's going to come in and be your new cover 1. I'm in the Jordan Battle camp. I don't care if Von Bell is familiar with this freaking squad. I don't care. Jordan Battle was good for this team down the stretch. He played over 500 snaps last year. He was a sure tackler, very good at coming up and making plays to stop the run, which is good because your run defense sucks. And he was very solid in the back end in coverage. I like Von Bell. I think, if you don't really have anything else at safety, he is an adequate starter. I just think you have better Von Bell right now on the roster, and you saw that last year. Like, your problem last year wasn't, we didn't properly replace Von Bell. No, your problem last year is you lost Jesse Bates. Oh, thank you for listening to my TED Talk. Let's talk about the depth there in the secondary. So DJ Turner currently projected as the backup at outside corner. Honestly, it's gonna be a coin toss between him and Dax Hill. Regardless, both are question marks at the cornerback 2 position. Fun fact, doesn't really change my grading. Josh Newton was drafted this past season. I love it. I talked about how I think he's a great fit for Coach Lou. You go back when I was talking, just scroll earlier in the video if you missed me talking about Josh Newton and how he's a good fit. Jalen Davis. He was... Oh no, I'm about to get this cat confused with the Jalen Davis that got drafted out of Miami this past year. Yeah. You almost got me. Utah State. Okay, not too familiar with him. So he's listed as the backup in the slot. Let's see if he made it past cuts. Looks like he did. No, he didn't. He got cut. Okay, no need to talk about him. And Lance Robinson got cut. Lance Robinson. Coastal Carolina? Tulane. I knew it was one of those schools with that like aquamarine green. So like no one there in the slot. I imagine Daxton Hill. If Mike Hilton goes down, Daxton Hill's your guy on the slot. right? It's gotta be. Well, I mean, to be fair, they really like Tyson Anderson. I like Tyson Anderson. He's a guy that mainly functions as a box safety, but can work in the slot. Was a former, I believe, a former corner back at Toledo. Again, 2022 NFL draft was a lifetime ago for me. You got DJ Ivy. He's on the IR. Nate Brooks was cut. Looks like their 7th round pick in Anthony made the roster. I went over him in the draft section. So like, the safety room's fine. It's solid. It's just you get to that corner position, it's just like woof, woof, woof. I don't really know how this is all going to work out. I don't. Outside of Cam Taylor-Britt and Mike Hilton, cornerback 2, bit of a question mark. What the hell is Dax Hill? I guess we'll see. But I think my grade for a C+ is more than kind, more than fair for what we saw in terms of an on-field product last year. I mean, they add Geno Stone. That's a great addition. So you kind of solve one problem there with Daxton Hill not exactly having the best year last year as that cover 1 guy. But you still have the big question mark of cornerback 2. So I think having their defense being middle of the pack is fair. It's fine. It's a suitable grade. But let's go ahead. Let's discuss how this team will do in 2024. And like always, we're going to start by projecting the ceiling for the Cincinnati Bengals. And Bengals fans, I got great news for you. I got great news. Because you know how last year you went 9-8, you know, with your quarterback going down. T. Higgins was banged up. The offensive line had its struggles. The defense was pants. And you went 9-8 with the hardest schedule in football last season. Well, I guess the football gods looked upon you and had mercy, because I have y'all with the 2nd easiest schedule in the NFL. So let's go ahead and project this ceiling if things go ideal, if they progress in areas, if Burrow stays healthy. So you open the year with the Patriots. Bam, that's a win. You are going to have to travel to Burrowhead. The Chiefs are always a tough win. Well, I think the Bengals are currently like 3-1 in Burrowhead. So I'm going to leave that blank for now. Might come back to it. You got games against the Commanders, Panthers. Those are winnable games. I think it's fair to say the Bengals they split the AFC North. I think that's fair. I mean, let's look at how you did last year, which, I mean, to be fair, that's not a great indicator since last year you were on the struggle bus, but let's just go ahead. Let's have you split. You end up getting the Giants here. Like, dude, look at this so far. Road games against the Chiefs. Okay, tough. Panthers, Giants. Okay. Again, I'm going to be split in the AFC North games. You get the Eagles at home. I'm willing to give you that victory. Raiders. That sounds like a potential win. Again, we're projecting the ceiling of this squad. We're going to have them split with the AFC North. And then prior to your bye, you take on the Chargers, who they're kind of a hard team to project right now. Justin Herbert dealing with the foot injury. Let's give it to them. Let's give them the win. You get the Steelers coming out of your bye. You get it at home. That's great. You do take on the Cowboys. And fun fact, I just think I don't know, man. Cowboys and the Dolphins. I'm just so accustomed to those teams being very similar. And when those teams come against like playoff teams, they struggle. So I think it's safe to say, hey, let's give the Bengals the win over the Cowboys. Look at this, another difficult difficult road game against the Titans. And that's not a joke, actually. The Titans are like sneaky good at home. Even when they're bad, they're good at home. I mean, look at this last 4 games. This isn't like the usual. Typically, the last 4 games, like that 4-game stretch at the end of the year for the Bengals, is usually somewhat difficult. But I mean, you get a home game against the Browns. and that's coming off the Tennessee game. You get to face the Broncos. They're probably going to be a mess of their own. And then, I mean, you get the Steelers. Last year, I think the Steelers swept you. But again, Burrow, banged up, hurt. Yeah, actually, like the Steelers only faced Jake Browning last year. So that's not even fair. So what, that puts them at 13. I think that's fair. And you could maybe even give them this Chiefs win. But I mean, you go back, you look, it's like, okay, they're outside of the AFC North. Their toughest games are Kansas City, Philadelphia, Dallas. You got to imagine they probably go 2-1 rather than going 3-1. So let's go ahead. Let's take that off the board. I think 13 wins is a fair ceiling. It's fair. That's probably, honestly, it's tough to get to 13 wins, let alone. I was talking about this in, I don't know if it was my Detroit, I think it was my Detroit deep dive. That teams that have finished with 13 or more wins over the last 3 years, only 9 teams have done that. And you had 6 teams do that in 2022, kind of being an outlier. So to project 13 is just something that rarely happens. Typically, you're only going to see like 2 to 3 teams maybe do that. So I feel confident if, the Bengals are healthy, they can be one of those teams. But it's not like my projection for this team is far off. I got them with 12 wins. Again, it's kind of an easy schedule, in my opinion. You're outside of the AFC North games, which, yeah, they're going to be tough. You got 6 of them. You have only really 3, maybe 4 other hard games out there on the schedule, which means, honestly, the Bengals should be a shoo-in for at least 7 wins this year without taking into account your difficult games. So, and I get it, man. Good teams, they'll have those random losses one week. The teams they should have beat, it happens to everybody. So, like, if you could go 6-1 in your easy games against like the Panthers, the Commanders, the Broncos, the Patriots, if you go 6-1, you're probably feeling really good about your chances. Because even if you go 5-5 in your difficult games, that puts you at 11-6 and making the playoffs. So yeah, I think the Bengals, they're going to bounce back this year. It's going to be carried by the offense. Hopefully the defense can progress in some areas. We'll see. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. If you want to check out any of my other deep dive videos, you could check out, the division rival Falcons. Ravens, get my bird teams confused right here. Or you can check out some of my summer scouting for the 2025 NFL draft class. You can check that out right here. But as always, until next time, you be easy, my friends. Later.